Alright, so what we're dealing with here today at the shop, thermostat replacement on these old cars, 307 Oldsmobile. If you have cruise control, you're going to need to remove the bracket. It actually holds the unit in. You shouldn't have to disconnect any of the linkages. So I'm just going to try and maneuver this bracket out of the way. There's two bolts there. One of them actually holds the thermostat housing down. There's a bolt in behind here as well, just next to the alternator. And I'm just going to move it out of the way, just like so. We don't need to, make it move a mile away. So now there's a stud in here. So you'll need a deep socket. 1/2 inch, I do recall. Oh no, I lied. No, yes it is 1/2 inch. Okay, there you go. So 1/2 inch to remove all those fasteners. And I already removed this one, so I'll get that out of there, and we'll get this car running again, hopefully, once I get that fuel line done. Oh, you gotta love it when that happens. So the coolant in this car is actually pretty clean, so now hopefully, the thermostat was supposedly sticking. We don't know that for a fact. Apparently it overheated once, and who knows why. It could be even a defective water pump, or the temperature light doesn't work, who knows. So I'm going to take just the cheapest precaution. I mean, a $9 new thermostat, especially seeing as how it probably never got one since the 90s, or maybe ever. Might as well just change her up. Alright. Okay, so lift this out of the way. There's our thermostat. So pretty straightforward. Looks like our old gasket is stuck to the housing itself. So I'm going to disconnect this bypass hose that goes to the water pump. I'm going to take that off of there so I can actually get the housing out of here. Now this bypass hose was actually leaking. I can probably make a good assumption as to why. Looks like that rubber hose on there is a little big, so I think somebody might have been doing something with this before. Oh, the joys, the joys. Okay, so I just bashed my hand against something, so once the feeling returns to my hand, well then, continue on. If you were lucky enough not to bash your hand, well, good for you. You must be special. Okay, so this thermostat does look like it's been actually stuck, because it looks pretty gummy just by looking at that. So there we are. And yeah, well, we'll put a new one in there for sure. So anyway, the old one's out. We've got quite a bit of mess here. This engine coolant is fresh, which is good. So next step, as a lot of you guys should know, we're going to clean up the mating surfaces here. And if you have a gasket scraper, that'd be the perfect thing to use in order to get rid of all this leftover crap. Sometimes you'll be able to get the majority of it off by just using, sometimes you'll get lucky. I'm not saying that you will. It's coming off in bits and pieces here. So anyway, like I say, you'll need a gasket scraper, a new gasket, and we'll go ahead and clean this up and get a new thermostat. Alright, so pretty well just like that. It's all good to go. So if you don't have a gasket scraper, you can just use a flathead screwdriver, and just make sure you're not going to gouge anything. See, the gasket scraper is a little too big to get in here in this groove here, so what I've done is just kind of got rid of some of the goop with just a screwdriver. Clean it up the best you can, and we'll go ahead and install our new thermostat. And that's basically all there is to it. I mean, there is no stress with this. here's our replacement. Stant, typical standard grade. So go ahead and install this, and just tape holding this box shut. Hang on. I guess it pays to flip the box over a few times. So, big, wide open letters that say "Open here." And there you go. My wife usually tells me that I don't pay attention to close details as often as I should. So, go ahead and install our new thermostat in the same fashion as the old one was removed, and well, then we'll get started on reinstalling. Isn't she a beauty? And now for your gasket. You can lay the gasket on top, over top of the thermostat, or you can try and just, hold it there while you start your first bolt. Either way, it doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that you're not going to jam your bolts through the gasket. You want to make sure the gasket is laying flush. You don't want to damage the gasket, or you'll end up having to go and get another one. Another thing too is that the thermostat, the carton you purchase this in, is not going to have a gasket, so you gotta remember to ask for the gasket. Just something for you to think about before you go to the store. Of course, doing this outside, the wind starts to pick up. There's something else to drive you nuts. That's pretty well that. Now we'll go ahead and reinstall this apparatus, and the gasket will probably move, so just remember to keep an eye on the gasket. You don't want to install those bolts and then all of a sudden, you're pinching the gasket, or you just wrecked a gasket. They are cheap, but I mean, who wants to make another trip to the auto parts store? So we'll go ahead and install our bypass hose. That's a little too large. Slipped in there pretty easy. And just like so. Go ahead and tighten this unit down. And we'll proceed to the next saga of our journey. So when you're inserting the stud, just remember that to install the stud in the short end facing up, okay? Because you won't have enough threads if you do that, and you'll have a lot of threads sticking up, and you're going to wonder to yourself, well, like, what did I do here? So it's the long end of the stud that goes down, and the short end is going to be what's sticking up. That's where your bracket is going to be bolted to. So just keep that in mind, and we'll continue on. I conquered this engine cooling job single-handedly, you could say. So, don't torque them down just yet. Kind of snug them up and just kind of do it in sequence. Sometimes there's 3 bolts holding down the thermostat gasket. These particular old vehicles, I think, only had 2, but I mean, same rule of thumb applies. I mean, just kind of, give it a light torquing and just go back and forth between the 2 of them, and snug them up, start the car, see what happens. you have coolant leaking all over the place, then you know your gasket, there was a piece of gasket material that might have been still stuck on there, so you want to take a look at that. I mean, look at all the pieces here, right? Like, I mean, you could tell there's a lot more, and it blends into the housing as well. Like, I mean, you might not notice it until you kind of feel a little bit of a ridge, so run your finger across there, you'll feel the old gasket there, and you want to make sure you get that off. Otherwise, it'll heat up, it'll build up pressure, and it'll start to squeeze out of different areas. It'll make for a really crappy afternoon, believe me. Make you want to drink more. Alright, next reinstall the cruise control apparatus, which serves absolutely no purpose because it probably hasn't worked since 1994. But you know what? It's still there. It's still complete. And well, if you're lucky enough that it actually does work, congratulations. Alright, so finalizing everything here, the last few steps. Now you could test the vehicle if it runs, which this one does not. Test it for any leaks, and that's all there is to it. That's how you change the thermostat on an old 307. Pretty easy. The way it should.